In the quaint village of Ayadi, nestled amidst long granaries and rolling hills, lived a young woman named Jumoke, with fairy red hair and a spirit as wide as the forest that surrounded her home. Jumoke was known for her rebellious nature. Despite the warnings of her parents and the elders of the village, she often found herself drawn to the edge of the forbidden forest. On a warm summer day, with the sun casting dappled shadow through the canopy above, Jumoke stood at the edge of the village, gazing longingly at the dense thickness of the trees that marked the boundary of the forbidden forest. She felt the pull of adventure tugging at her heartstring, whispering promises of secrets waiting to be discovered. Jumoke, where are you off to now? Called out her mother, Folake, her voice with concern as she emerged from their modest cottage. Jumoke turned to face her mother, and her emerald green eyes gleaming with determination. Just exploring, mother, she replied with a mischievous grin. I'll be back before nightfall, I promise. Folake shook her head, her worry etched into the lines of her face. Be careful, Jumoke. You know the forest is forbidden for a reason. There are dangers lurking within it, depths that even the bravest among us dare not face. But Jumoke was already slipping into the shadows of the forest, her heart pounding with excitement. She ignored her mother's warning, her mind filled with thoughts of adventure and exploration. As she ventured deeper into the forest, the air grew thicker with the scent of earth and moss, and the sounds of the village faded into the distance behind her. As Jumoke wandered deeper into the forbidden forest, her senses were alive with the sights and sounds of the wilderness. Shafts of golden sunlight filtered through the dense foliage, casting intricate patterns on the forest floor. The air was alive with the chirpings of birds and the rustlings of leaves, creating a symphony of natural beauty that enveloped her. Suddenly, a strange sensation pricked at the back of Jumoke's neck, causing her to pause in her tracks. She felt as though she were being watched, the hairs on her arms standing on ends. Glancing around nervously, she searched the saddles for any sign of movement, and then she saw it. A glint of bone white amidst the emerald green of the forest floor. Jumoke approached cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. As she drew closer, she realized with a start that it was a skull. Not any skull, but one that seemed to emanate an otherworldly aura. Who goes there? A voice ached in her mind, sending shivers down Jumoke's spine. Startled, Jumoke stumbled backwards, her eyes wide with fear. Who is there? She stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. The skull seemed to shimmer as it spoke. I am the guardian of these words, child. It intoned solemnly. What brings you to this forbidden realm? Despite the fear gnashing at her sides, Jumoke felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. Drawing herself up to her full height, she met the skull's empty gaze with a stare. I am Jumoke, daughter of Ayadi, she declared boldly. I come seeking adventure and knowledge, for there is more to this world than the confines of my village. The skull regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Bold word for one so young, it remarked. Very well, Jumoke of Ayadi. Venture further into the heart of the forest, if you dare, but heed my warning. There are dark forces at work here, forces that even I cannot comprehend. With that cryptic message, the skull fell silent, its hollow gaze fixed on Jumoke's retreating figure as she disappeared into the depths of the forest. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Yet Jumoke couldn't shake the memory of our encounter with the talking skull. Its words lingered in her mind like a haunting melody, tugging at her thoughts and igniting her curiosity. Despite the warnings of the villagers and the growing uneasiness in her heart, she found herself drawn back to the forest time and time again. One fateful evening, as the moon hung low in the sky and the stars glittered like diamonds overhead, Jumoke found herself standing once more at the edge of the forbidden forest. But this time she was not alone. Clutched tightly in her trembling hands was a bouquet of wildflowers. Their vibrant colors, a stark contrast to the shadowy depths of the forest. "Are you sure about this, Jumoke?" a voice whispered beside her, causing her to jump in surprise. It was her childhood friend, Errol, his face etched with concern as he gazed at her with worry-filled eyes. Jumoke nodded resolutely, her heart pounding in her chest. "I have to know, Errol," she replied, her voice tinged with determination. "I have to know if there is more to this world than what we've been told. And if that means facing the unknown, then so be it." With a reassuring smile, Errol took her hands in his. "Then I'll go with you," he said softly. "No matter what lies ahead, we'll face it together." Hand in hand, Jumoke and Errol ventured into the forest once more, their footsteps muffled by the soft carpets of moss beneath their feet. As they journeyed deeper into the hearts of the woods, they were surrounded by the silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant hooting of an owl. And then they saw it, a clearing bathed in moonlight, and a lone figure standing at its center. It was the talking skull, its bone-white surface glowing softly in the moon's silver rays. Beside it stood an altar fashioned from twisted roots and vines, adorned with white flowers and candles that flickered in the night. Jumoke's heart skipped a beat as she approached the skull, her racing pulse with a mixture of fear and excitement. Without hesitation, she knelt before the altar, her eyes locked with the empty sockets of the skull. "I am here," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "I am ready." And with those words, the forest seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting with bated breath for what was to come. As the news of Jumoke's unconventional wedding spread through the forest like wildfire, whispers of disbelief and speculation filled the air. Villagers exchanged nervous glances and muttered behind closed doors, unable to comprehend the audacity of Jumoke's actions. In the quiet confines of her family's cottage, Folake wept bitter tears, her heart heavy with grief and worry for her wayward daughter. "Jumoke, how could you?" Folake cried, her voice choked with emotions as she clutched her husband's hand for support. "How could you defy us in such a reckless manner? Do you not care for the consequences of your actions?" Jumoke stood before her parents, her head held high, despite the tears that welled in her eyes. "I love him, mother," she whispered. Her voice trembled with emotion. I love him with all my heart and cannot bear to be apart from him." Her father, Marcus, shook his head in disbelief. His brow furrowed with concern. "But Jumoke, he is not one of us," he said softly. "He's a creature of the forest, a being of darkness and mystery. How can you be so sure of his intentions?" Jumoke's gaze hardened as she met her father's troubled gaze. "I trust him, father," she replied firmly, "and I believe in the power of love to conquer all obstacles, no matter how daunting they may seem." But despite her protests, Jumoke could see the pain and disappointment etched into her parents' face. They had raised her with love and care, instilling in her the values of their village and the importance of tradition and obedience, and yet she had chosen to defy them in the most unthinkable way, risking everything for the sake of her forbidden love. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the drift between Jumoke and her family deepened. Their once close bond, strained by the weight of her disobedience, and amidst the turmoil and heartache, Jumoke couldn't help but wonder if she had made a grave mistake in following her heart, or if true love was worth sacrificing everything she held dear. As Jumoke grappled with the fallout from her unconventional marriage and the strained relationships with her family, strange occurrences began to unfold in the village of Ayadi. It started with the subtle whispers of unease and murmur of discontent among the villagers, as if an invisible thread of tension had woven its way through the fabrics of their once peaceful community. Crops withered in the fields. Their once lush greeneries turned brown and brittle under the harsh gaze of the sun. Livestock grew restless, their plaintive cries echoing through the night as if sensing the looming threat that hung heavy in the air. And in the heart of the forbidden forest, where Jumoke had dared to defy tradition and marry the talking skull, shadows danced among the trees, their sinister movements in the darkness that laid waiting just beyond the depth of perception. Jumoke watched with growing unease as the village descended into chaos, her heart heavy with guilt and regrets. Had her disobedience unleashed a malevolent force upon the land, as the skull had warned? Was she to blame for the suffering that now plagued her home, her family, and her fellow villagers?